There is a specific face you are searching for in every crowd, a particular voice you're straining to hear beneath every conversation, and a familiar wound you are unconsciously checking for behind every smile someone offers you. And until you understand why that search never ends in peace, you will keep walking into rooms that feel like home, only to realize you've been standing in a burning building the entire time. You know the feeling. It arrives softly, almost like nostalgia. You meet someone new and within days, sometimes hours, there it is. That strange, intoxicating sense of recognition. Your chest loosens, your guard lowers. Something inside you whispers, finally, I know this one. And because that whisper is so seductive, because it feels like arriving at a destination you've been traveling toward your whole life, you ignore a much quieter, much more important question. Why does this homecoming always end in evacuation? This is not about bad taste in partners. This is not about the dating pool being contaminated or modern love being disposable. Those are convenient stories we tell ourselves to avoid standing at the edge of a much more difficult truth. The truth is that your romantic life is not a lottery. It is a script. And the casting director for that script is not your heart, not your conscious mind, and certainly not chance. It is a part of you that you have never met, operating in complete darkness, choosing the same actor to play a different character over and over again. Today, we are going to step into that dark backstage area of the psyche. We are going to look at the silent architect that builds the exact same emotional house for you, every time, regardless of what city you move to, or what profile you swipe right on. We are talking about the unintegrated shadow. And by the time this video ends, you will understand why you keep hearing the same argument in a different tone of voice, why you keep feeling the same abandonment in a different zip code, and why the person you are most desperate to change in your partner is actually the person you are most terrified to meet in yourself. Let's begin with a simple, devastating premise. The reason you feel like you are dating a carbon copy of your past is because you are. But the copy machine is inside you. It is not the world that is unoriginal. It is your perception that is rigid. And this rigidity is a survival mechanism that has outlived its usefulness and is now actively dismantling your capacity for actual intimacy. Think of your psyche as a vast, ancient estate. You live in the front rooms. These are well lit, clean, decorated with your conscious values. I am kind. I am logical. I am easygoing. You invite guests into these rooms. This is the persona you wear to work, to dinner, to the first few dates. It's the curated self. But behind these rooms, there are locked doors. And behind those doors are the cellars, the attics, the crawl spaces where you stuffed everything you were told was unacceptable about you as a child, as a teenager, as a human being trying to fit in. In those dark spaces live the raw, messy, needy, furious, selfish, and vulnerable parts of you. The part of you that wanted to scream when you were told to be quiet. The part of you that wanted to cling when you were told to be independent. The part of you that was jealous, that was lazy, that was cruel. You locked them away because you had to. You couldn't be a functioning person with all that noise spilling out into the living room. You had to repress it to survive the family dinner table and the playground politics. And you did such a good job repressing it that you forgot the doors even existed. This is the unintegrated shadow. It is not evil. It is just unlit. It is the sum total of all the energy you disowned. And here is the magnetic trick. You cannot see this material in yourself because you have spent a lifetime building walls around it. But you can see it. You just need a screen to project it onto. That screen is other people. Specifically, the person sleeping next to you. This is the mechanism of psychological projection, and it is the primary reason you keep waking up next to a stranger who feels eerily familiar. When we encounter a trait in someone else that we have buried in our own shadow, it doesn't just register as information. It registers as a full-body electrical event. It is the jolt of chemistry, or the sudden heat of trigger. Let's use a concrete example to move away from the abstract. Imagine a man. Let's call him David. David prides himself on being the stable one. He is the rock. He never loses his cool. In his conscious self, anger is unacceptable. His parents fought. He vowed never to be like them. He locked his capacity for anger, his healthy aggression, his ability to say no. You've crossed a line. Into the cellar. He threw away the key. When David meets a woman who is fiery, expressive, perhaps even a little confrontational, what happens? Does he think, oh, she's dealing with her own stuff? No. David feels an irresistible pull. He calls it passion. He says she's so alive. But a few months later, he's exhausted. He's saying, why is she always so angry? Why does she always start fights? I just want peace. He is now in the repetitive theater of suffering. What is actually happening? David cannot access his own healthy no. He cannot assert a boundary without feeling like a monster. So, he subconsciously seeks out a partner who will act out the anger for him. He gets to experience the emotion vicariously. He gets to feel the heat of it, while simultaneously maintaining his identity as the calm, good one. He gets to judge her for the very thing he is afraid to be. He is addicted to her shadow performance because it gives him a false sense of wholeness. He feels superior and alive at the same time. But the subconscious has a darker, more tragic motive than just entertainment. The theater of suffering is not just a drama, it's a job training program for the ego. The ego's primary job is not happiness. Its primary job is coherence. It needs to maintain the story of who I am. If David's story is I am the peaceful victim of chaotic others, then the ego will sabotage any relationship that threatens to disprove that story. If David meets a truly peaceful woman, a woman who is calm and regulated, the ego panics. Where is the familiar friction? Where is the familiar feeling of being the underappreciated saint? Without the chaotic partner, David has no stage on which to perform his identity. He will feel bored. He will say, there's no spark. And he will walk away, back toward the fire. Because at least in the fire, he knows who he is. He is the one who puts out fires. He doesn't know who he is in the quiet of a green meadow. This is the subconscious orchestrating a repetitive theater of suffering. It keeps you trapped in a loop, because the alternative, the total annihilation of your current identity, feels like death. And to the primitive wiring of your brain, change is death. Better the devil you know than the void you don't. So, what are the specific archetypes that this shadow magnet pulls in? Why does the casting director keep sending the same actor, just with a different costume and a slightly different accent? Let's move away from the one-size-fits-all advice like stop dating narcissists. The shadow is more precise. It casts people who hold the exact shape of the emotional key you threw away. We need to examine 3 of the most common and most destructive shadow pairings. These are the invisible contracts we sign with partners without ever reading the fine print. And we need to go deeper than just naming them. We need to understand the exact mechanics of how they trap us. The caretaker and the bottomless well. This is one of the most pervasive and socially rewarded shadow dynamics. You identify as the giver. You give time, energy, money, emotional labor. You are the person everyone calls at 2 a.m. You are the one who remembers birthdays, who mediates conflicts, who holds space for everyone else's pain. On the surface, this looks like virtue. Society applauds you. Your friends call you selfless. Your parents call you responsible. But beneath that applause, a silent transaction is taking place. Your shadow contains the needy one, the part of you that is exhausted and just wants someone to hold you up for once. This part of you is not pretty. It's not Instagrammable. It's the part that wants to collapse on the floor and say, I can't do this anymore. Someone else carry the weight. You cannot admit this need because it would shatter your identity as the strong one. It feels like a moral failing to say, I am empty. Fill me up. The caretaker identity is a fortress, and to admit neediness is to open the gates. So, you attract the bottomless well, a partner who is in a perpetual state of crisis, who is lost, who requires constant saving. They might be an artist who can't catch a break, a lost soul with a broken past, someone struggling with mental health, or simply someone whose life is always in disarray. The details of their crisis change. 1 month it's a job loss, the next it's a family drama, the next it's an existential meltdown, but the structure remains the same. They need you. You resent them for draining you. You complain to your friends, I give, and get nothing back. But notice what you don't do. You don't leave. Why? Because if the well was full, you'd have no purpose. You project your own unacknowledged neediness onto them, and then try to fix it in them. You are watering a plant inside them, hoping it will grow inside you. The unconscious thought is, if I can fill their endless void, maybe my own void will stop aching. But it never does, because you're using a watering can on the wrong side of the fence. The tragic irony is that the well often senses this. They know, on some level, that they are a project, and they resent you for it. They feel your caretaking as a subtle form of control, a way of keeping them dependent so you can feel needed. And they're not entirely wrong. This is why the caretaker and the well often end in a bitter explosion, where the well accuses the caretaker of being a martyr, and the caretaker feels utterly betrayed. After all I've done for you? The truth is, you weren't doing it for them. You were doing it for the part of you that was too proud to ask for help. The aloof island and the desperate chaser. Here, the conscious identity is independent. You don't need anyone. Closeness feels suffocating. You are the island. You take pride in your solitude, in not being clingy, in being self-sufficient. You might even romanticize your independence, seeing it as a sign of strength and emotional maturity. You say things like, I'm just not a relationship person, or I need a lot of space. Your shadow contains the clinging child, the part of you that is terrified of being alone, that wants to merge completely with someone else and dissolve into them. This part of you is desperate for connection, for reassurance, for the warmth of another body. But you find that vulnerability repulsive. It makes you feel weak, out of control, pathetic. You learned early in life that needing someone was dangerous. Perhaps you were shamed for it. Perhaps you were abandoned when you showed it. Perhaps you witnessed a parent who was consumed by their own neediness and vowed never to be like them. So, you attract the desperate chaser, a partner who texts too much, who needs constant reassurance, who is too much. They push for the relationship title too fast. They get jealous if you look at your phone. They want to spend every waking moment together. They are the embodiment of the very clinginess you have outlawed in yourself. You feel superior in your cool detachment. You roll your eyes at their anxiety. You tell yourself, I just process emotions more logically. You might even pathologize them. They have an anxious attachment style. I'm secure. But you stay. You stay because their pursuit is the only proof you have that you are desirable without having to risk vulnerability. You get to feel wanted, chaste, and important without ever having to say, I want you too. You are watching someone else do the desperate, messy work of reaching out while you sit safely on your shoreline, collecting the seashells of their affection. The chaser, meanwhile, is in agony. They sense your distance and it activates their deepest wound, the fear of abandonment. So they chase harder, which makes you pull away further, which makes them chase even harder. It's a perfectly engineered feedback loop of suffering, powered by the shadow of both partners. The island needs the chaser to feel desirable, The chaser needs the island to feel the familiar sting of unavailability. Neither can leave, because the dance confirms a core, painful belief about love for both of them. The perfect parent and the rebellious child. This dynamic is less about romance and more about a control drama rooted in early conditioning. You are the adult. You have the 401k, the clean apartment, the 5-year plan. You are responsible. You pay bills early. You return library books on time. You floss. Your identity is built on a foundation of order, predictability, and being good. Your shadow contains the wild, irresponsible impulse, the part that wants to quit the job, buy a one-way ticket to a place with no Wi-Fi, and make a terrible, beautiful mistake. It's the part that wants to stay up all night for no reason, to spend money on something frivolous, to be messy and chaotic and free. You crushed that impulse to become reliable. You equated safety with goodness and chaos with danger. Perhaps you grew up in a household where one parent was the irresponsible one, and you had to become the opposite to survive. So, you attract the rebellious child, a partner who can't hold a job, who spends money they don't have on vintage guitars or spontaneous trips, who lives on the edge of society's expectations. They are charming in their chaos. They make you feel alive in a way your spreadsheet never does. But soon, the charm curdles into frustration. You find yourself nagging them, managing their life, cleaning up their messes, and paying their late fees. It's exhausting, but it's also a window. You are living vicariously through their chaos. You get to shake your head at their irresponsibility, while secretly envying the wind in their hair. You get to feel like the martyr, the stable one, the adult in the room, which reinforces a very old, very comfortable identity. You're not dating a partner. You're parenting a proxy for your own unlived life. The rebellious child, on their end, often seeks out the perfect parent because they need containment. Their chaos is not pure freedom. It's often a reaction against a fear of structure. They secretly want someone to set a boundary, to say stop, to provide the stable ground they never had. But they will also fight that boundary tooth and nail, because accepting it feels like losing their identity. And so the cycle continues. They rebel, you parent, they rebel harder, you parent more sternly. It's a power struggle where both parties are secretly getting something they need. In all of these cases, the person in front of you is not the problem. They are a mirror. And the thing you most want to change in them, the laziness, the neediness, the coldness, the rage, is the exact location of the door you locked in the cellar of your own soul. This is why conventional relationship advice fails. Just communicate better. Just find someone who aligns with your values. That's like telling someone with a magnet in their pocket to just try harder to pick up a piece of wood. The magnet will override everything. Unless you deactivate the magnet, unless you integrate the shadow, you can sit across from the healthiest, most aligned person on earth, and you will either feel nothing because they don't hold your projection, or you will unconsciously try to warp them into the shape of the familiar pain. Have you ever found yourself, perhaps in a moment of quiet honesty, actually trying to provoke the very reaction you claim to hate in your partner? Have you ever picked a fight on a Sunday afternoon just to feel the familiar tension of being misunderstood? Have you ever dropped a passive-aggressive comment knowing exactly which nerve it would hit, just to see the predictable explosion? That is the ego, knocking on the door of the theater, asking for the show to start, because the silence of the empty stage is unbearable. The childhood blueprint, where the script was first written. Before we move to the solution, we must understand the origin, because the shadow is not born in adulthood. It is forged in childhood, in the crucible of the family system. The repetitive theater of suffering is not just a random pattern. It is a very specific reenactment of a very old play. And understanding that play is the first step toward rewriting it. Imagine a child growing up in a household where emotional expression was met with punishment or dismissal. A little boy cries because he's hurt, and his father says, "Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about." A little girl expresses anger at being treated unfairly, and her mother says, "Don't be so dramatic. Nice girls don't get angry." What does the child learn? They learn that certain emotions, sadness, anger, neediness, are not safe. They are threats to connection. They are threats to survival. Because for a child, connection to the caregiver is survival. So the child does what any intelligent organism would do. They compartmentalize. They build a wall in the psyche. On one side of the wall goes the acceptable self, the good boy, the nice girl, the quiet one, the helper. On the other side of the wall goes the shadow, the sad one, the angry one, the needy one. This is not pathology. This is brilliant adaptation. It kept you safe in an environment that could not hold all of you. The problem arises when you leave that environment and enter the world of adult relationships. Because the wall is still there, and you are still operating as if showing the shadow will result in annihilation. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It festers, and it seeks expression. Since you cannot express it directly, you find someone who can. You find a partner who is allowed to be angry, or sad, or needy, and you attach yourself to them. You marry the very thing you were told you couldn't be. This is the core insight. The partner you keep choosing is not your opposite. They are your disowned self, wearing a different face. The silent demand, how we train our partners to stay in character. Here is where it gets even more uncomfortable. We don't just find people who fit the script. We actively, though unconsciously, train them to stay in the role. We give subtle cues of approval when they act in ways that confirm our shadow projections. And we withdraw when they step out of character. The caretaker, when their partner shows a glimmer of independence and self-sufficiency, might feel a strange sense of unease. They might say, "I'm so glad you're feeling better," but their energy shifts. They become slightly less available. They stop asking as many questions. The partner, sensing this withdrawal, might unconsciously slip back into crisis mode to restore the connection. They learn, on a somatic level, that being well means being abandoned, and being broken means being loved. The aloof island, when their chaser partner finally gives them space and stops texting, might feel a pang of anxiety. Where are they? Have they lost interest? Instead of enjoying the space they claim to want, they might send a small, ambiguous text, just enough to pull the chaser back in, to restart the pursuit. They train the chaser to keep chasing by rewarding the chase with intermittent, unpredictable attention. The perfect parent, when the rebellious child starts getting their act together, gets a steady job, cleans their apartment, might find themselves picking at something else. But you're still not saving for retirement. But you still don't call your mother enough. They need the rebellion to continue, so they can continue being the parent. Can you see it now? The theater is not a one-man show. It is a duet. Both players are on the payroll. Both players are trapped in a dance that feels like fate, but is actually just a very old, very tired habit. So how do we turn off the projector? How do we stop the search for a face in the crowd and start seeing the face in the mirror? The process is not about finding the right person. It is about becoming the right person, or more accurately, becoming the whole person. This is the work of integration, and it begins with a simple but profoundly uncomfortable practice. Phase 1. The retrieval of the key. When you feel that intense charge around someone, that blinding rage, that sickening anxiety, that magnetic, can't eat, can't sleep obsession, do not ask, what is wrong with them? That is the question that keeps the prison door locked. Ask, what is the trait in them that I have completely outlawed in myself? This is not a one-time question. It is a daily, sometimes hourly, practice. You must become a detective of your own triggers. Every time your partner does that thing, The thing that makes your jaw clench or your stomach drop. Pause. Don't react. Just observe. And then ask, what is it about this specific behavior that I find so intolerable? Where in my own life am I not allowed to do this? What would happen if I did this? Just a little bit. If their laziness infuriates you, where in your life are you exhausted and yet refuse to rest? If their neediness suffocates you, where in your life are you aching to be held but too proud to ask? If their aloofness breaks your heart, where in your life have you built a wall and then complained no one visits? This is not about blaming yourself for other people's bad behavior. Let me be very clear. If someone is abusive, lying, or harmful, that is not a projection. That is a boundary issue. Leave. This work is for the gray area, the chronic dissatisfaction, the recurring type, the nice person who just leaves you feeling hollow. This is for the patterns that follow you from one phase to the next. Phase 2. Conscious embodiment. When you can identify the trait you've projected, you must then do the counterintuitive work of embodying it in a conscious, healthy dose. This is the scariest part. This is where the ego screams loudest. David, the peaceful man who attracts angry women, needs to learn to say no without his voice shaking. He needs to allow himself to be angry at the person who cuts him off in traffic, or the boss who disrespects his time. He needs to take up space. He can start small, sending back the undercooked steak at a restaurant without apologizing 15 times. Telling a friend, I can't help you move this weekend. I need to rest. These small acts of healthy aggression are not cruelty. They are the retrieval of a lost limb. When he does this consistently, the fiery woman archetype stops looking like a soulmate and starts looking like just another person. The magnet is off. The caretaker needs to go home and be needy. They need to sit on the couch and say, I can't make dinner tonight. I need you to take care of me. They will feel like they are going to die of selfishness. Their inner critic will have a field day. You're lazy. You're a burden. You're just like your mother. Let the critic scream. Do it anyway. Order takeout. Let someone else clean up. The world will keep spinning. And the next time a bottomless well appears, they will see a person in pain, not a project to fix their own self-worth. They might even feel compassion without the compulsion to rescue. The aloof island needs to send the first text and risk looking desperate. They need to say, I missed you today, without the safety net of a casual, ironic tone. They need to let themselves want. The perfect parent needs to buy the vintage guitar, even if they can't play a note, just to hold something that represents freedom. They need to stay up late watching a stupid movie, just because. Phase 3. The exhaustion of the script. As you begin this integration work, something peculiar begins to happen. The familiar theater starts to feel boring. The lines you used to say, the accusations you used to hurl, the roles you used to play, they lose their charge. They lose their juice. This is a dangerous moment. The ego will panic at this silence. It will scream, but this is who we are. If we're not the victim, who are we? If we're not the fixer, what value do we have? You will be tempted to go back to the theater just to hear the noise of the familiar drama. You will be tempted to call the ex who was so good at pushing your buttons just to feel something sharp again. You will feel a sense of withdrawal, like an addict coming off a drug. Because drama is a drug. It's cortisol and adrenaline and dopamine in a very specific, familiar cocktail. Don't. Sit in the silence of the empty theater. Let the dust settle. Let the boredom wash over you. This is where the real work begins. Because on the other side of that silence is not loneliness. It is spaciousness. It is the ground on which an original relationship, a relationship not written by trauma, can actually be built. What if the chemistry you feel isn't the universe signaling a match, but the psyche signaling an incomplete circuit in your own wiring? The shadow is not an enemy to be defeated. It is a bag of gold that you left at the bottom of the ocean because you were told gold was heavy and would make you sink. It contains your spontaneity, your righteous anger, your deep need for rest, your lust for life, your capacity for raw, unpolished joy. When you integrate the shadow, something strange happens to the repetitive theater of suffering. The house lights come up, and you see the stage for what it is. You see the shoddy set design, the predictable script, the actors who were just playing a part you assigned them. And suddenly, the drama is no longer compelling. It's boring. You stop dating the same person in a different body because you are no longer looking for a body to house the disowned parts of yourself. You have brought those parts home. You are now a complete residence. And from that place of wholeness, you don't look for someone to complete you. You look for someone to stand beside you. You don't look for a familiar trauma. You look for a curious presence. You stop walking into burning buildings because you are no longer a firefighter in search of a blaze. You are just a person, looking for another person to share the cool, quiet evening with. The original story. There is a deeper layer to this, one that is rarely discussed in the context of dating. It's the layer of the family system. Many of these shadow contracts were notarized in childhood. The caretaker was the parentified child who had to manage a mother's emotions. The aloof island was the child whose vulnerability was met with rejection or invasion of privacy. The perfect parent was the child who learned love was a transaction for good behavior. These aren't just personality quirks, they are survival strategies that became identities. To let go of the pattern is to let go of the only way you knew how to be loved as a child. That is why it feels like death. That is why it's easier to project and suffer than to integrate and change. But there is a promise here. The promise is that on the other side of this internal demolition, you are not met with a void. You are met with a self that is capable of seeing others clearly, not as screens for your movies, but as sovereign beings with their own complex, messy, beautiful interiors. The next time you feel that jolt of recognition, that electric, terrifying, I know this one feeling, stop. Take a breath. Do not pack your bags and move into the script just yet. Look at the person in front of you. And then, with a courage you may not know you possess, look at the person inside you. Ask yourself, what part of me have I sent them to find? Because the answer to that question is not the end of your search. It is the beginning of your freedom. And when you are free from the subconscious theater, when you are no longer casting roles from a wound, you might find that the love waiting for you on the other side doesn't feel like a dizzying familiar chaos. It feels like something far stranger and far more precious. It feels like peace. It feels like a story you've never read before, written by an author who finally showed up to the desk with a full cup of ink, ready to write something true. Not a rerun, not a familiar tragedy, just a quiet, original, unfolding conversation between two people who have done the hard work of coming home to themselves. And that, more than any spark or any chemistry, is the foundation upon which a life, a real life, can be built.